Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com, and I want to talk about today separating the idea from public good from public service. So for the purposes of this video, when I say public good, I'm going to use it more the way that, not in the economic sense, but in the way that most people mean it when you see them talk about it in a political sense. A public good just meaning a good or service that's provided to everyone. And people don't necessarily have to directly pay for the good or service. So that means it's available to people who are the poorest and available to people who are the richest. It's just freely available to consume. So that's a public good. Now, as a libertarian, I have no issue with the idea of a public good, of a good that's made available freely to everyone. That's fine. Okay, so a lot of people will just accuse libertarians of being anti-public school, anti-public roads, anti-public this and that. No. Public roads, in the sense, public schools, in the sense that they're publicly available, is not something that libertarians have a problem with. If someone wants to make something available freely, kind of like how Facebook accounts are free to anyone who wants one, that's fine. The issue libertarians have is the way that it's paid for. Because things like taxation, again, basically violate people's individual property rights, because you're saying that you have to give X portion of your income. Now, people believe that and even a lot of libertarians believe that there's some level of taxation that's necessary to fund at least necessary functions of government. Again, different people have a different view on what's necessary for government to do. But anyone can agree that some things just aren't necessary, and the level of government that probably exists right now is way beyond necessary. So the question is, what are those things? But basically, libertarians believe that the government shouldn't be doing things that are not necessary, because to fund things that are not necessary, you must tax more. So now you're taxing people, you are taking their property and violating their property rights more than is necessary. And doing so, that would be immoral, and also, it just, from an economic sense, it's just a bad idea, because it's less capital for them to consume more investment with. It also basically straps resources in the economy. How is an economy supposed to evolve from individual investment decisions, individual consumer decisions, if they don't necessarily get to keep their income to do so? So there's a cost and a benefit from an economic sense, but from a moral sense, again, there is the whole idea that you are taking more of someone's income than is necessary, which means you're making it difficult for them to fund their day-to-day life, their individual operational costs. And that's not cool. So again, libertarians have no problem with the idea of a public school or a public road. We may think of ideas and imagine ways that it can be done better, but that doesn't necessarily mean the way it's done now cannot be done. We're concerned about the way it's funded. And if these functions must be done by government, and are necessary to be done by government, that's one thing. And that's a debate that people have. But if it isn't necessary, if it can be provided through a market context, then it should be done so. So that way people can voluntarily put forward their money, whether through voluntary donations, through purchasing a good or service, or just by making a loan or other ways of investing capital. If something is worth it, if something provides enough value, you should be able to raise capital for it. In the sense, it just requires people to be entrepreneurial enough to not just create the good or service, create public schools, create public roads, but to be able to articulate the value in it, to quantify the value in it, to be able to convince others to put forward their capital for it. Because there is a cost, there is a monetary benefit that people get from infrastructure, from education. All you need to do is communicate value. That's a benefit of markets, that people, when they have to convince people to give their money to them, it forces them to think through what they're doing. Because if they can't communicate that value, if they're not able to say, hey, this is why you should give your money to it, then that means you haven't really thought through what you're doing. And that market process is a deliberative process that yields better results for a reason, because it forces people to think through what they're doing in order to get the capital that's needed to make things happen. And so in that case, you might end up with better roads, with better public schools, if you allow that market process to allow for a more deliberative process. So hopefully that got the mind going and thinking. My name is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com. I will see you guys next time.